Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Law Tutors webinar, Practicing for Exams Now. I am Brittany Raposa. I'm a professor of law at a law school on the East Coast, and I'm happy to do this live webinar for everyone who's joining or everyone who will be watching the recording on our YouTube channel. Hopefully a 20-minute quick webinar on how to or why it's important to practice for exams now during your semester, and some tips for that as you go and as you transition throughout the semester. And so we just quickly want to welcome you to LawTutors. We are a tutoring company, a national tutoring company, and we tutor students for the LSAT. We tutor law students for their law school exams, law school classes along the way. We also tutor for the bar exam. And we have free resources like these webinars. We have other webinars coming up. How to write an exam is our next webinar, so be sure to check out our website for that. And we also have a lot of articles on our website, a lot of blogs, and so that have all tips, tricks, and everything to help students. So please check those resources out too if you get a chance. And so why are we having this webinar with law students right now and with all of you? So we are having it essentially because it's so important, and it's something that a lot of law students don't do. They maybe start practicing, if at all, closer to exams. So maybe in May in the spring semester, or December or end of November for the fall semester. And if you practice throughout your exam or your study period or your semester, it actually will increase, or likely will increase, your performance and your grades on your final exams. And so it's so important for a lot of reasons. And so one, the more you have practice in applying the law you're learning in the classroom, right, the more you will then be able to execute that application on an exam. So it won't feel like, oh, this feels really new to me, or, oh, I haven't done this a lot. Instead, your exam should feel like, okay, this is just another round of me practicing, except it's just the real deal. This is like the final practice exam. Another reason is because essentially, just to be cliche, we don't know what we don't know. And so if you don't work on that application or applying things in practice before you get to the exam, we might think we understand concepts, and we might think that we understand how a rule works, but you really don't know until you don't know. And so that means you just don't know until you finally apply it. You use a fact pattern and you apply it to a particular fact pattern. And so testing yourself throughout the semester is so important because it allows you to, one, check in with yourself and see if you know this stuff and you understand it to the complete potential that you need to. And then it also allows you to tweak your studying or tweak your understanding before you get to the end of the semester. And then finally, practicing exams now is really important because it also allows you to check in with your writing, right? So how's my exam writing doing? I'm not going to wait until the end of the semester to practice exam writing. And so it gives you a bigger skill and more longevity in building up that particular skill. I also think that there's other benefits to practicing exams now and throughout the semester. You know, a lot of law students, and I know that I did when I was in law school, I had test taking anxiety. And so one huge thing to help deal with test taking anxiety is to practice more, because you're giving yourself a sense of comfort and you're giving yourself exposure to what makes you anxious. And so if you do a lot of practice exams, it can alleviate some of that test taking anxiety you might feel come final exams. So I think it's really important for that reason to kind of build up self-confidence, to build up comfortability, and to kind of reduce any test taking anxiety that you might experience when taking final exams. And so there's kind of some steps that we take in how to practice. It falls under one of those. And so we've already had a webinar on how to outline and how to synthesize your notes. And please feel free to check that out on our YouTube channel if you weren't able to watch that or attend that one live. But so we're kind of in the step process of this last one. So the first step in kind of getting ready for final exams is preparing for your classes. So like doing the readings, reading the cases, getting the information that you need to from those cases. And then the second step would be that you were attending class and you were taking notes from attending those classes. And then the third step would be you're making an outline, and you should be continuously keeping up with your outline throughout the semester. So these practicing problems and keeping up with your outline kind of go hand in hand, right? So the best time to complete practice problems is when you've completed a topic in your law school class, your outline is up to date, up to that topic, and now you're ready to use your outline and practice questions with that topic. And so then we have that step 3, you take your notes from your reading, you take your class notes, and you take everything and you update your outline accordingly. And then once you have completed a topic or a section in your class, you've completed the outline for that particular section, then it would be time to complete practice questions in that topic or section. So like, for example, if you're in torts and you just finished negligence, right? You should update your negligence outline and then do some practice problems in negligence. That's when you are ready to tackle some practice problems. And then, so what are some strategies in order to make this work, right? One of the most important things would be to make a schedule, and make a schedule for yourself now. What is that block of time you're going to synthesize your notes and make your outline up to date? And then what's that block of time that you are going to do practice problems on that topic? So start with your syllabus. What are the dates of your syllabus, and when do your syllabus or your syllabi indicate that you're going to finish topics? Make that align with your study schedule, right? If you see that you're going to finish a topic on March 2nd, then maybe at the end of the week of March 2nd, you can work on finishing your outline for that section. And then you can also then do a couple of practice problems the following week on that section, right? So making a schedule and sticking to it is really, really critical. So like I've got one, I schedule my entire life. And so making sure that you prioritize this though, and block off time to specifically prioritize it is important. Because if we don't do that, then it just becomes like, well, final exams are like a super far away, right? They're not for another 2 months or 3 months. And so I'll deal with those practice questions later. But the importance of it, like we just discussed, is doing it throughout your semester. So making a schedule to hold you accountable, right? And to keep that accountability is really, really important. And so that's definitely the first place you'd like to start. And like I said, use your core syllabus to help you gauge when you're going to be finished with topics. And then, of course, like I said, these two things really go hand to hand, practicing problems and keeping your outlines up to date. So you want to keep your outlines up to date as you go through the semester too. Do not wait until the end of the semester to create an outline. After you finish a topic, finish and outline that topic, and then, finish and outline that topic, and then you can do some practice problems. And so, like I said, the really, really crucial thing of these practice problems is to exercise applying what you're learning. And without that, right, you don't really fully understand if you know a concept or can issue spot a particular concept or really can analyze one. And so the skill that you're developing is being able to apply what you are learning. So you spent 3 classes on a particular section or a particular topic, like what's a duty in negligence and torts, for example. So then doing practice problems finally allows you to apply what you have learned in the classroom, right? Apply it to a particular fact pattern. And then, something that you definitely want to consider doing is utilizing your professor's office hours, right? You can also, with doing practice problems, go to them and see if you are understanding this material. Are you understanding? Are you able to apply what you are learning, right? And so if you are ever confused on a particular topic, the key then would be to go to your professor's office hours and talk that topic out, so that you're definitely ready to see if you can apply what you're learning. So utilizing office hours is also pretty important and a good strategy when you're dealing with all of this and navigating all of this material. And so, one thing you do want to know at the outset, and hopefully your professors will tell you, is what type of exam questions are you going to be responsible for on the final exam? Because you want to make sure that you're also practicing throughout the semester those types of questions. So, you want to know, for example, if you're going to be doing multiple choice questions, and short answer questions, or longer essay questions, because then you also want to include those types of questions into your practice. That's not to say though, if you are not responsible for answering multiple choice questions on your final exam, multiple choice questions can still be really helpful to do throughout the semester because they are still a source of a question that allows you to apply what you're learning, and also allows you to really just gauge whether you can understand this material, right? And so even if you don't have multiple choice questions or short answer questions on your exam, it doesn't mean that you still can't utilize those as practice problems when you're studying throughout the semester. You just want to make sure that you're also utilizing and practicing the types of questions that you will be responsible for on your final exam. So think about the timing of this, right? So the timing I am telling you in this webinar is not to wait until the end of the semester to practice problems to get ready for finals. It is to do it after a topic or a unit. So like in this example that I have here, right, after completing battery and torts, you can start then doing practice problems on battery. Or even a little bit broader, you finished all of the intentional torts in torts, then you can start practicing problems on all of the intentional torts, right? And so one question then might be, when I'm doing practice problems now or throughout the semester, do I have to time myself and do it closed book like perhaps a final exam would? And my answer to that is no, right? It's actually really beneficial throughout the semester if you use your outline while completing the questions, because it's also then allowing you to see whether your outline is effective. Is my outline helping me with my material? Is it going to help me on my final exams? Doing practice problems throughout the semester and using your outline to help you with that will effectively then allow you to gauge if your outline's working or if it's helpful. When you get towards the end of the semester, so now when you're closer to final exams, that's when you want to definitely practice exam questions or practice questions in a timed like condition, in a quiet space on your computer, like you're probably going to do, right? And so you do want to incorporate that type of practice in too, but I think that's okay to do towards a little bit in the end of the semester, maybe a month away from your final exams, right? But when you're doing practice problems throughout the semester, it is absolutely completely okay to use your books or to use your outlines to see, in essence, if these multiple choice questions, if these short answer questions, if these essay questions, if your outline is helping you answer those types of questions. So where do you get practice questions? So you can get practice questions from a variety of different sources, right? So you can use the best practice questions to use are your professor's prior exams, right? If your professor gives you prior exams with sample answers, those are like gold, right? That gives you a lot of insight into how your professor tests, and it gives you a lot of insight into what you likely can typically experience. But not everyone, not every faculty member gives prior exams. And so you can also use any handouts or hypotheticals that your professor has used in class. Utilize your case book, right? At the end of the case or in the notes section, there are a lot of hypotheticals that you should consider, or anything in your course materials that have those typical hypotheticals. You can also utilize study aids. So you can use a resource on casebriefs.com, Study Buddy Pro. There are tons of hypotheticals and exam questions and practice exam questions in that resource. You can also use study aid books like Examples and Explanations, Questions and Answers, Or you can check with your law library and look for their resources and the study aids that they have available, right? There's so many sources for practice questions out there, and so you can get them from a variety of different ways. At LawTutors, you're able to also get some of these practice questions. So we sell mini essays, which are short answer questions. We sell multiple choice questions and longer essays. So you can also get a variety of different practice questions. One big question that or a lot of questions that you want to ask yourself when you are doing practice exams is, how can then you self-assess your work, right? If you do practice questions, how are you supposed to know if you're doing well or if you need to improve, right? And what do you need to improve? So here's a series of questions you want to be asking yourself after you've completed a practice question or a practice exam question. So ask whether you spotted all of the relevant issues that were being tested. So how's your issue spotting doing? Are you stating the correct rules? Are you using all of the relevant facts in your analysis? Are you addressing counter arguments, or are you addressing both sides of the coin, right? Are you coming to correct conclusions, or are you coming to plausible conclusions? Is your answer organized and easy to follow, right? Like a sample answer would be. So what's really important is not only practicing those questions, but also self-assessing your work, right? And good self-assessment questions are these, right? Are you issue spotting correctly? If you're not, then it means that you might not understand or know the law as well as you should. Are you stating the correct rules in your rule statements? Are you using relevant facts? Are you able to analyze and choose what's relevant and distinguish what's irrelevant? Are you addressing counter arguments in your exam questions? Are you going to demonstrate to your professor that you understand that the law is not so one-sided and that there are gray areas, and those gray areas can be determinative on what the conclusion could possibly be? And then when you look back at your answer, is it organized? Is it easy to follow? Is my professor going to be able to read this, right? And along with self-assessment, like I said prior, feel free to go to your professors in their office hours and ask them what they think about your answer. Am I writing this in the way that you're looking for me to write this? Is there anything that I can write that would improve my answer, either substantively or organizational wise? So then what's next after you do that practice question or the series of practice questions? It's also kind of a self-reflection and an adaptation of what you need to do in the future, right? Assess why you missed issues. Do you not know the law? Are you having trouble understanding a concept? Is your outline not effective to answer the particular question you answered? Do you need to go back and edit your outline to make it more effective to answer questions, right? Do you need to go back and understand a concept that you don't? Do you need to talk to your professor about a typical law that you don't, right? All of this is just strengthening your ability to answer the exam at the end of the semester. Then you also need to adapt your study schedule based on how you're performing on those practice questions, right? What topics do you need to build into your study schedule more based on your performance of those questions? Which topics do you need to put into your schedule to practice more because you're struggling with them? Do you need to meet with your professor about any topics or any exam taking strategies for them particularly? So after practice, it's really critical that you adapt your schedule. So just so we can use an example to put all of this in execution on what we've been talking about today. So for example, I'm a first-year law student in civil procedure, and I just finished going over subject matter jurisdiction. So I just finished that entire unit, and next week we're starting with personal jurisdiction. So I know then that I want to follow those steps that we talked about in this webinar. I want to review subject matter jurisdiction. I want to update my outline and make it up to and complete after subject matter jurisdiction. And then I want to practice a problem in subject matter jurisdiction. So this is my first step, right? I'm synthesizing all of my material. And this is a very condensed version, right? Not to say that a subject matter jurisdiction outline wouldn't look longer than this, but for purposes of this webinar to demonstrate what we're talking about, this is my outline. I've got what subject matter jurisdiction is. I've got the two components of subject matter jurisdiction, and my outline is now complete and up to date up to finishing subject matter jurisdiction. And then I want to do a practice question. So I found this short answer question that my professor gave us. And so I want to be able to answer this like I would if it was a short answer exam question. So I'm told that we've got a question. Someone is filing an action based on state law in federal court, and they're using the defendant's defense, thinking that the defendant will claim a First Amendment immunity or a defense on First Amendment grounds. And so I'm alleging, or this person is alleging, that there's federal question jurisdiction. And then there's a motion to dismiss based on the fact that there's not subject matter jurisdiction. And so I have to explain my answer to answer whether the motion should be granted or whether it should be denied. So perfect practice question that my professor gave us, because it completely is in line with subject matter jurisdiction. It's going to test the concepts that I've learned in class. And so the next step then is that I want to issue spot, right? Before I write this thing out, let me issue spot with this practice question, right? After reviewing and making my outline, am I able to? What are all of the issues I can spot? So in this just small short answer, I see that there's a lack of subject matter jurisdiction. It's specifically testing federal question jurisdiction. I'm issue spotting the fact that the plaintiff's complaint is pleading a state law issue, a violation of a state statute, and the defendant's defense is based on a First Amendment, which is federal law. But I know that the plaintiff's complaint has to allege a violation of federal law, not a defendant's anticipated defense. That does not raise the issue of subject of a federal question jurisdiction. So I know then that from issue spotting, I've got all of those relevant facts and I've got no federal question jurisdiction. So this is the type of thing you want to engage in with this practice problem. Underline what facts are triggering issues. Make a list of the issues of what you're seeing in this fact pattern, just as I did here. Then the next step when you're doing this practice, these practice problems are then to execute it, right? Write out an answer, practice writing an answer out. And if I did that, I've got this like nice IRAC practice that I did. The issue is whether the court has federal question jurisdiction. I've got my rule statement for federal question jurisdiction. I've got my analysis that I was able to practice writing out. Here, the plaintiff is alleging a state law claim because he's alleging that the rally is being held without a license in violation of a state statute. Although he's alleging the defendants will raise a defense that falls under the First Amendment, an anticipated defense does not grant the court federal question jurisdiction, right? Because it has to be a cause of action pled on the plaintiff's complaint. And so therefore, the motion to dismiss will be granted. So not only was I allowed to practice issue spotting, but now I'm also to practice writing out rule statements and analysis. I'm able to apply law and fact together and get that practice. A lot of law students make the mistake in exams of just regurgitating facts from the fact pattern, and it's not actually an analysis. Or in the alternative, a lot of law students make conclusions without fully explaining them. So in order to then practice not falling into those common traps, practicing analysis writing throughout the semester will just create a stronger analysis writer. So it will allow you then to connect law and fact together, to get that practice that your professor is looking for when they are reading an analysis, of connections being made, law being applied to a set of facts. And so does anyone in this webinar, right, have any questions about taking exams early? We have a couple of questions in the Q&A box, but if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A, or you can type them in the chat. And so one person is asking, how can I practice final exams and know that I've got the answer right? So one thing I will say about that, and we touched on this a little bit in this webinar, is work with sample answers and pick out those issues, right? Your sample answer, the sample answer that you're looking at does not have to look exactly like the answer you wrote in order for you to do well. That's really, really important to remember, right? So if your answer doesn't look like a mirror image of the model answer, that's absolutely okay. It just should contain similar components, right? So it should contain the same issues. It should contain the same similar rules, and it should use the same legally significant facts, right? If you didn't write as much, but you still got those issues and were able to analyze those issues, you're probably okay, right? There's probably no way we would be able to write like a sample answer because your professor writes the sample answers, or companies in these supplements write sample answers, right? And they're not under test taking conditions. And so it's okay if your answer doesn't look exactly like it. It just has to contain similar components, issues, rules, and relevant facts, right? Also should be organized and being applying those facts to the law that you're using. Let's see. So someone is also asking, if you're really, really struggling with analysis writing, how can we improve? So one of the biggest ways to obviously improve is kind of the essence of this webinar, practice, right? But I think that one of the biggest ways to improve your analysis writing is to really take a step back from it, right? And so after doing a practice question, you want to make sure that you step away from it before reviewing it. So maybe either look at it later in the day or maybe the next day and say, okay, am I applying the law to the facts? Or am I just restating facts from the fact pattern? And if so, then let me rewrite the analysis, right? The act of rewriting makes really, really strong exam writers or analysis writers. So being able to identify that, okay, I'm not really analyzing anything here, I'm kind of just restating facts, and then being able to go back and rewrite it in the way it's supposed to sound, making more connections, that act of rewriting is actually what really improves analysis writing, right? So not only practicing, but also rewriting what you've practiced. Okay, so someone is asking, my professor does not give me any practice exams. I am worried that when I do practice exams from a book, they won't look like theirs. Any suggestions? It's a really good question. And I know that a lot of professors don't give prior exams. And so I guess and I know this is probably not what anyone wants to hear, but I guess the goal of doing practice exams is not necessarily to practice something that looks exactly like what your particular professor is going to do, right? Because that's probably impossible, because even if you are doing their prior exam, your exam could look completely different. So the purpose of practicing questions as you go throughout the semester is to actually test yourself, right? Are you understanding concepts? What don't you understand? Are you able to apply the law to the set of facts? If you can do that with all of the concepts you learned, then it doesn't necessarily matter at the end of the day what the final exam looks like, because you understand all of the law and you can apply it to new sets of facts. And so whatever new set of fact that you get on your final exam, you're going to be able to tackle that, right? And so the goal is to be able to be sharp in those skills and sharp in the law, not necessarily to be able to predict what your final exam is going to be. Because if you've done practice questions from now until the end of the semester, an exam is just another hypothetical, another set of new facts that you apply the law that you now understand well to. So those were all the questions so far. Does anyone have any other questions? If so, please feel free to type them in. Someone likes my background, my painting, thank you. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming to this webinar. Please feel free to check out the How to Write an Exam one that we're having, I think, in about a month. So check our website for details on that, where we'll go through how to actually write these rule statements. How do you write an analysis? So this webinar is just intended, right, for you to be thinking about now practicing problems before we get to the end goal, before we get to the exam writing on the final exam. So start practicing and checking in with yourself about how you understand these rules, and doing practice questions is going to be able to help you do that. Right. So thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can find all of my info on our site too. I'm happy to help. And I will see you all hopefully very soon.